It is 11:10, so we are at our official start time. So alas, we have to leave our vacation time. So welcome, and I'm so thankful that you chose to come to this session, which is on some strategies to motivate content reading. Part of any class that's being taught, but for TCI social studies and science, the reading is part of the lessons that you're taking your students through. So we'll be sharing some strategies for that. So just the usual, I know you guys are old hat at this by period 3, so you're using chat, and specifically if you have questions or issues, you can go to Q&A, and my wonderful co-host Natasha is here to address that while I focus on teaching this webinar. If you need closed captions, they work beautifully, so click into that. And the resources that Natasha mentioned just a minute ago, it's new for us this year in this webinar format. So in resources are all the handouts that I'm going to be referencing today. And for some, I'll be showing you where they are in your TCI account. So without further ado, who am I? Well, I'm Susie Allione, and I've been training with TCI since 1998. So I'm not going to dwell on that because that just pretty much shares how old I am, because I was an experienced teacher at that point when I started. But you can see my classroom here. I've grabbed a few of several hundred photos that I've taken over the years. And I'm sure you look at these pictures and you see perhaps a window into your own classroom if you're using TCI already. Or if you're one of the newbies that we met this morning, this is what your classroom can look like, whether they're doing science lessons or whether they're doing social studies lessons. Your students are engaged. And as testimony to that, I still keep up with some of my students. In fact, I took 2 of them out to lunch the other day that just graduated from university. So they remember you, and they remember that you put your heart and soul into teaching. And I can't imagine using anything else but TCI in my classroom. So as you can see, I saw California for some of your visitations this summer. So I went to Cal Poly Pomona and Cal State Long Beach to get my credential. But I taught primarily at South Tahoe High School for 25 years. So driving, I live off the hill, so up and over a mountain pass every day to get to school. But it was worth it because I had these kiddos, which I miss. Excuse me. So in this reading, content strategies class, I'm going to be going over steps necessary for students to be successful readers. And I just might be speaking to some of you that are reading specialists. So by all means, anything that you can contribute to chat, please do, because you are truly the experts in this. You will have an opportunity to choose from a variety of reading strategies to support your struggling readers. And some of these strategies are really interesting and unique, and they vary the reading part of each lesson for your students. So it's not always the same thing that they're doing. They're not just always opening up their book and having to read. These strategies kind of give them some interactive approaches to getting the content that they need for the lesson that they're doing, whether it's a response group or a social studies skill builder, visual discovery. Then I'm going to dive into just lost it. Sorry about that. Okay. Then I'm going to go into a TCI subscription and jump around and show you how the TCI platform helps students read for content. What are some tools that TCI has implemented to help your students using their student accounts? Okay, so that's the plan for today. So we're going to start with a Mentimeter. And in this Mentimeter, you, the experts, are going to share a reading strategy you've used successfully with your students. So I'm going to jump into Menti, and it'll have the QR code and the Menti code. and hopefully it works. There you go. Okay. So in this one, you're just going to enter what you see, and hopefully this is working. Please give me feedback if it's not. There we go. I know it's working. Thank you. Ooh, signposts. Cool. You might have to elaborate in chat. Visual note-taking, partner reading. Rap read is one of the strategies that we're sharing. Whisper read, alternating paragraphs, SQ3R. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of the QR code so we can see. Vocabulary, that's a key component of all the TCI lessons, so that's great. How come I can't scroll down? There we go. Peer reading and feedback, of course, and it's also respectful to listen. Popcorn reading, I used to use that a ton. Rereads, that's an interesting approach. Chunking the reading is so important. And TCI has what we call, not what we call, but what reading specialists call considerate text. So it's chunked for the students in a very visual and meaningful way. Pre-teaching vocabulary is huge. Sometimes the TCI lesson has the vocabulary reinforcement at the end, but you can always change the order. I like games. Anytime you can gamify a lesson is so helpful for students. Turn and talk, partner shares. These are awesome. Write 20 questions. So that's one of the ones that I'm going to go over today is kind of a nuanced version of writing the 20 questions. Whisper read. These are great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so let's get on. This is kind of a robust session. So I need to make sure that we get through everything that we need to do today. So I appreciate your input. And these are great ideas. So it's just testimony to the fact that you as teachers are all experts in reading, and we can help each other. So I'm going to open up with something you may have seen, maybe not. But on the next slide, you're going to see a chunk of reading. And what I want you to do is fill in what you think are the missing words. You don't have to write anything down. You can just kind of do it in your head, like what you would probably fill in the blanks with. So here you go. Okay. So I'm going to have my co-host volunteer share out loud what she can come up with.
Okay, I figured out a little bit, but not all of it. The problems that confront parents in raising chickens from infancy to adult life are not easy to know. Both farmers and mothers meet with many decisions in their concern for satisfactory production from the early stage to later life. It is important that young chickens should have plenty of sunshine and good food for healthy growth. Because going should not occupy the same barn or sleep in the same what do they call it? Chicken coop. They're often afraid of the dark. I tried my best, Susie.
Great, Natasha.
I appreciate
the effort. I would love to hear from everyone, but we can't, plus we don't have voice, but so Natasha, I suspect that you've spent a fair amount of your time on a farm that you came up with chickens. So you just use schema to construct meaning from the wording provided. So you used the words that you did know to try and fill in the words that you didn't know. And in expository text, as students progress through learning, they are exposed to a lot of words that they don't know. So they have to kind of read between the lines and figure out what's going on. So the words there were providing clues for you, and you did pretty well. So readers naturally draw on what they know to predict and construct meaning from new content. So we need to always recognize the fact that our students, even if their advanced students, are still struggling with new content, and we need to provide the structures to help them learn more effectively. So I'm assuming some of you are parents, okay? At the very, truthful part of it, you are teachers. So you kind of look at this through that lens, through that schema. However, if you're a chicken farmer, then you would have predicted the missing wording correctly, which Natasha kind of did. So here's the actual paragraph. So if you actually came up with banties and geese, so it's just kind of a fun little schema. You can create your own, but this is really more for you, the teacher, than something you would actually share with your students. But what it does is it reinforces that even though we teach social studies, or even though we teach science, we also are teaching reading. And that is so important. I mean, I spent a fair amount of time teaching advanced placement students, and they struggled with reading as well. And maybe they could read, but it was the comprehension aspect that they had trouble with in some of these advanced books. So higher level reading skills need you to help support them. And that's what I hope this session gives you, just some tidbits that you can use, and to just remember the fact that we're teaching reading. Okay, so one of the strategies, and you've already had access to the resource room, so the resource, what do I want to call it, button at the bottom of your webinar, but you'll find a packet in there, and I'll show you a QR code in just a minute if you want to use that. Has this strategy, and I love this strategy. And what I don't want to do is use this strategy all the time, but it is one that I find really successful with students. And plus, again, it's not just turn to, section 2 of chapter 22. It's actually, kind of varies up your interactive classroom experience with your students. So notice that your students are standing, and they're in groups of 3. So you're going to have, in this case, you're going to number your students 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and they're going to know what numbers they are, and you can have them repeat it back to you. And students 2 and 3 are going to receive a checklist. Now, this isn't something that TCI creates for you. These are strategies that you would go into whatever lesson you're teaching from TCI, and you would have to do this yourself. So in this lesson on life in the colonies, I went into this section and I pulled out what I thought were essential facts that I wanted my students to get out of the reading in order to move forward. And I created these little sheets. I had 4 on a page, and then I cut them up, and the students would use those, students 2 and 3 would use those to check the reader. So all 3 of the students have read, but in this round, only students 2 and 3 are able to see the checklist. So student 1 is then expected to just share. What are my takeaways from the reading? What did I learn? What was it about? I remember this. Oh, and then they talked about this, and it might not go in order of the reading. They cannot, and they're going to try, they can't peek at the checklist, and they can't be looking at their book or at their computer screen. Students 2 and 3 are checking off or marking with an X the facts that the student recalled. So if student 1 got most of them, that's great. Students 2 and 3 now help student 1 recall what was missed. And somebody mentioned this in our preview, that they're going to have to create questions to ask them to elicit those responses. So they can give them clues. Students 2 and 3 can look at the text if they need to come up with questions to ask the students. And now students go and complete the reading notes. So in all the TCI lessons, there's a point at which students are completing their reading notes. And now they're ready to do that. So this is just one of the strategies that you could implement from the packet that will help students just kind of have a little bit more fun with their reading, okay? And they would switch roles for the next section. So some of the TCI lessons say, state that students need to read all the sections before you start the activity, like the response group or the social studies skill builder. And some of them will have them do it in phases. So it's up to you how, you switch roles for the next section, but you might do part of the TCI lesson and then come back to the reading part of it. So these are the strategies, one of which is the one that we just did, 3-point review. So what I want you to do is peruse the packet that you're either finding in your resources button at the bottom of the webinar or using this QR code. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes actually, to peruse it. Oh, and there's a bit.ly URL at the top. And share in chat which one you would use, which one seems to resonate with you. So maybe just kind of look at the titles and find one that you like. And I'm going to look at chat. And so will Natasha.
While people are going through that, Susie, there was a question about like, where do you get that checklist? And I think you said that's something you create yourself, right? For what you know is going to be in that lesson.
Yeah, these are kind of like auxiliary strategies. So they're not part of the TCI lesson. They are reading strategies for you, the teacher, to adapt a TCI lesson to. So you would have to create that checklist yourself.
Someone's saying that they want to use more images this coming year and would love to try the picture of this. Picture this kind of builds on our visual discovery strategy, and it's so fantastic because anytime there's an image in a book, anytime there's an image of something you find online, you can train students to unlock that image and use it to build content knowledge before they read or get more into the content.
Beat the teacher is fun. Yeah, I've done that one several times. So now that you have the handout, you can peruse it at more length and kind of figure out which ones, note the ones that you think you want to implement with your students. And just, it's kind of one of those resources that I remember being in the classroom. I would go to a workshop and I would learn all this stuff and I'm really excited. And then I would get into teaching my curriculum and I would forget that I have these resources. So, anything you can do to remember that you have now some additional resources to help with your students that are struggling to read and that are just interactive. They're fun. Your kids, you know, they emulate the TCI strategies, which are so interactive and engaging. So why not use reading strategies that are interactive and engaging as well? So thank you for your feedback. And now what we're going to do is look into your TCI platform, your accounts, and see how TCI has made it possible to support the student in the student accounts to become better readers and more effective readers. Okay, so I'm going to go into, let's see, I navigated away from this. No, I'm in the right lesson. So I'm in United States through industrialism. And I just went to the Constitution lesson because, hey, you know, Constitution is something we probably already know a lot about. And I'm going to go, the introduction section is just, as we all know, just kind of a hooky intro to the topic, which is wonderful. But I'm going to get to some of the content. And in this case, section 1 breaks down the preamble. So TCI provides a number of organizational tools to help students build background knowledge and be more effective at that right here in the program. So if I highlight a section of text, and just so you know, if I go to play this, and I didn't highlight a section of text, it would just start at the beginning, 1, the preamble. Okay, so that's why I'm doing it that way. And if I play it,
And Susie, you're not sharing your sound, so we can kind of hear it, but not hear it clearly.
I know, and when I went in, I was looking for that, and it took me in like a back doorway. So I apologize for that. But TCI does read this out loud to the students, and in your tools, in your settings, you can choose narrative voice. So it goes pretty quick, and you can change the speed at which it reads as well. And just released, you can change the language. Okay, so if I go into, let's see if I stop that.
You have to select the section first. Yep, there you go.
And you can see I already did Arabic because I wanted to hear that. But it'll change. This uses Google Translate. So if I go into Chinese, and then I can actually play it. Which you can't hear, but you can hear it in the screen. So that's just a brand new release that TCI just put out like a couple days ago. You can also change the reading level. So it defaults to reading level A, which is on grade level, or you can go into a different level B, which is a little bit more accessible for your students. And you can change that. And you can change, the student can change it here if you give them permission to. So what I encourage you to do is in your subscription, play around with your settings and play around with these tools in the reading. So again, here's how TCI helps you help your students read. So reading level, speech to voice, changing the language if the student needs that. And here is the beautiful one, main ideas. So if I click on that, it highlights, the text is now highlighted to what TCI has identified as the main ideas from this section of text. Now you could have that turned off for all your students, but I would encourage you to leave it on for a while until you feel like they've progressed enough to turn it off. But it helps them with their reading notes. It helps them hone in on what are the important aspects of the text. And of course, you know, you can show highlights, and I haven't highlighted anything, or students could take notes. But these are the key tools that within the student account that students can use to help them with their reading. So it's not just, here's the page out of the textbook, read it. So they have some help, some supports.
And Susie,
Then,
one thing I want to like hit on here too is that
yeah,
from this page, you can click on the settings and you can do, you can set specific settings for individual students. You also can do them for individual classes. So if you, yeah, looking at the student access, I think it's the student features are the two areas where you can apply different things. If you go up to, I think it's student features, Susie. I'm pretty sure it's that one.
oh,
Yeah, here we go.
sorry, I do that.
You can pick, you know, oh, I want my kids to all have the level B text, right? So you can just select that one. I would uncheck level A, or you can edit it per individual student. You can see that in the purple. So you can go in and you can do like leveling by student. You know, things like making Spanish available, Spanish not available, you know, having the main ideas showing. You can just pick those things based on how you need to differentiate for you know, various students. So a great way that you can show your, you know, meeting the needs of students. If a student has an IEP, you can try to set it up so that they're as supported as possible.
Excellent. And as you saw with the language portion of this, TCI listens to you, the teachers that are using this in your classroom. So it was because of feedback from teachers that that was added right here instead of you having to do it yourself through Google. Then online at the bottom of each section is a reading check. And so the students can actually read the section and then complete the reading check, and you would get the results of what they chose for their answers. Okay, so do preamble and I can submit, and well, lo and behold, I got them all right. And then you can restart it. So one of the tools that Natasha just had me show is, do you want students to be able to have control over vocabulary games where they can do them over and over again, which is a nice feature for students to practice. So there's a reading check, and then of course they're reading notes, whether you're having them do it online in their student account or whether you're having them do it in paper form. In some of our elementary and middle school programs, they have interactive student notebooks pre-printed. The other feature I want to show are the vocabulary cards. And many of you mentioned at the beginning of this session that you pre-teach vocabulary. Pre-teaching and then kind of as a review at the end of the lesson is so useful. So I have already, I'm going to trash this copy of vocabulary cards. Yes, I want to delete. And here I can make a copy. That's how I got it. But just know that if you go into edit this vocabulary deck, it will save a copy for you. So what does the vocabulary deck look like? It's just flip cards, right? That go through several of the terms that TCI has selected for your students to know, okay? Complex ones, textual ones, just regular vocab terms that are applicable to the content area. But let's say I'm going to go back to the vocabulary cards up here. And let's say you feel that, well, there's too many terms. And I think my students already understand some of these terms. So you can just get rid of them, okay? And you can, you know, change the amount of cards that are in that deck for your students to use. And you can add a term. So, you know, you can enter a new term here, enter the definition. You can choose to add an image. Our elementary programs have images already, but you might want to, you know, reduce this by half and then find images to go along with your cards. And then you will share that. Okay, so I'm done. I didn't really make any changes. And I've got a copy of that vocabulary card deck. These vocabulary cards show up in your students' accounts, so they have access to those. So I think that these are fabulous because you can customize them to your own teaching needs. And it's great practice for the students. Under support, so I'm going to jump up here to your support button, which happens to be a place that a lot of teachers don't necessarily go because it's not part of the lesson. But buried in each of these sections are some wonderful toolkits. So the TCI approach to learning is going to talk about our pedagogy, and there's some civic resources. Differentiation is built into each lesson individually. So when you click on differentiation from here, you're going to get some general ideas for how to differentiate the learning in your classroom. But if you go into it from your lesson at the top of the page where you have your planning box, which I can show you in just a minute, you'll get it by lesson, which is just such a wonderful feature of TCI. So I'm going to go into, because we're in a reading strategies lesson, the reading and ELD support. When I do, the drop down just has amazing resources for me. So for English language arts and English language development, K2, 3-5, 6-12, Natasha has already input some of these, like the reading toolkit, she's already put into the resource button of this webinar. But if you want to go in, now you know where to go in your subscription. You could find the writing one. The vocabulary one has a few, since we've just talked about vocabulary, it's going to have instructions for illustrated dictionary, rate your knowledge, word grid, and word pyramid. So here's just some other vocabulary toolkits for you to use. This was probably the one that I used the most, because I always told my students that if you have to think about something so thoroughly that you can actually sketch it somehow, then you're at the understanding and comprehension level. So this was my favorite one to do, and then putting vocabulary words in their own terms. So I encourage you again to go into the support part of your teacher account and make sure that you're utilizing all the resources that we've put in there. It's just so many, it's hard to get them all in there. But there's reading support, vocabulary development, and then if you go into differentiation and you keep scrolling down, you're going to get into tools for differentiating instruction, maybe for different groups of learners, those students that have IEPs, students that are learning the language, right? So
I've got a question for you that came up as kind of a big picture philosophical one. Someone was asking, does trying all these different multiple strategies, like, cause confusion or lead to burnout by having so many different options, which like I said, it's kind of a philosophical question, because I think as a resource to teachers, we try to give you just lots of different ways to do things, because we know every teacher is different, every classroom is different. But yes, you can get overwhelmed and burn out.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's where we honor you as the experts in your classroom. You're reading your students and their needs. And if you happen to be facing a certain need from your group of students, then here's a place to go where you might find a tool to help you. Okay.
Yeah.
But certainly you're not using all of them.
And I definitely think, like we believe in the, like, you've got to crawl before you walk before you run sort of philosophy. So when you're starting with TCI, know that your basic classroom activities are going to already build in a lot of these teaching strategies. You saw those reading tools that are already built into the online. So, start with that. And then maybe there's one or two ideas, like I love to be a teacher, like that idea. I mean, kids would have so much fun trying to stump the teacher, so maybe you just pick one thing that you're gonna try this year or this month, incorporate that into your repertoire, and then next year you're going to be able to add something more and continue to kind of spiral up with what you can offer for your students.
Absolutely. And That's what I did. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes you just forget that you have these resources, but sometimes when you know that you need them, you have a place to go to get them. Okay, so let's get back to here. And we are finished with our lesson.
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions for you.
No, I don't know what happened to my question slide. I must have.
Okay. All right, I've got two more for us to round off, and then we'll get to certificates. One question was there was some chatter that came up about the reading checks. And I think we've got some of those answered in chat. The reading checks, will automatically appear unless you have made it so that you have to assign them. But the beauty of these reading checks is they are auto-graded and they will show up in your grade book. If you used any of these a few years ago, they didn't show up in your grade book. We used them just as a tutorial for students. But now we have added them for every section and they show up in your grade book auto graded. So it's just a great way for you to be able to see, did my students complete the reading? Do they understand the concepts when you look at those reading trends? And then you'll know if there's something that you need to go back and reteach. So that's a great new resource that's there. Our lesson games work the same way. They're auto-graded for students, and you can kind of use it as a diagnostic to see, did the kids get these concepts, or whether they need to have a little bit more review before you go on to assessment.
And they involve some reading too. So some of them. Excellent.
Yeah. And someone says, assign the reading checks. They can double as exit tickets or as bell work. Yay, love that. And then the other one, the question had come up on the Q&A, and this one, again, a little bit of a big picture question. If someone had said, they feel like their kids are do well going through the reading and the different assignments, but then, some of them are struggling when they get to the actual assessment and comprehending the assessment questions. So Susie, any thoughts you have on that?
Well, I think if you have perused the assessment and when you choose to use one of the reading strategies, you use it for that section of tests that happens to be more of the focus of the assessment. Certainly kind of helping your students through the assessments to begin with, maybe doing the lesson review game, which is like a form of assessment, only in the form of a game, and do it together as a whole class to teach them skills. I mean, I had to teach my students, how multiple choice works and, how to always use CER, claim evidence reasoning, for any response that you have to write. So I think if you're doing the lessons with fidelity, then you're actually making sure that you're emphasizing the content through the activity, which engages the student, so that they're then better on the assessment.
Yeah, and I know, if you're seeing that as a trend too, I really recommend doing some kind of open book, kind of pre-teach the assessments, give the kids some experience with working through those assessment style questions when you can be there to help them through it, and then try it again to see, did that give them enough background? If that didn't work, we do have, completely editable, assessment bank where you can get rid of distractors, you can change the wording on questions. So, that's where you might want to start taking advantage of that assessment builder to be able to customize things if you're finding that your students, just need a little bit more, differentiation on those assessments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did this a lot. I would go in and pick the TCI questions and edit them and add some of my own. I always liked to do a lot of written responses, not just multiple choice. So if I just go into TCI only questions, I can edit these as needed for my students. Okay. Beautiful.
One other thing just to throw out for preparing for assessments is the video activities. Those are new for 6-12, and so you may not have used them in the past. but they really reteach the content. They have short videos that provide the kids with the content in a different way. And then it encourages them to go back into the reading and then to answer a question. And so, they can move through those on a self-paced style, or they can work in small groups, but it really allows them to review the content again in another way. So that might be another nice way to prepare kids for an assessment, is to be able to go through this way. They're also great for, talking about reading strategies, because they always start with the video and then they go to the read. So they're getting background through that video, and then they'll go and they'll read more about it.
Yeah, so it kind of utilizes the TCI pedagogy of steps in the learning process through the video activity. And teachers that I've spoken with will do these together as a whole class. Maybe there's a lesson that you don't have time to do the whole activity for, like the response group or the skill builder. And you could just use, and I don't want to say just, I use that word very lightly, because these are phenomenal lessons that have been created for you to use with your students. But those students that need extra help, like Natasha said, you could assign it to them, or you could assign it, to the whole class to do individually. Great sub-plans, by the way.
Oh, good point. And we have lots of ideas going in the chat, which is awesome. So remember, if you want to keep the idea sharing going, we've got that teacher Facebook group. And so you can, if there's things that you want more information on, more ideas for assessment, that type of stuff, that Facebook group is a great place to share with other teachers. And we also have a TCI trainer that facilitates that can help to provide suggestions.
And just scroll through chat, and if there's anything that like, dang, I don't want to wait, I want to ask Facebook, I want it right now, just take a picture of it. Because you guys are amazing. You're just sharing such incredible ideas, and your enthusiasm is just really stepping out here for TCI, and what makes you such a great teacher. And that you chose to be here during part of your summer, which we really appreciate. So I'm going to get to the closing slides. So here's the Facebook group. Scan the QR code, great place to ask for tips. And again, like Natasha mentioned, it is monitored by TCI, but you are playing to the community of teachers that showed up today, okay? And they all have wonderful ideas. So we're on social media, product updates like the one I shared with you today, where we have integrated the Google language translation that you can play for your students. It's just, it just kind of blew all of us away that we saw yesterday that, wow, that's now live and it's part of our program. So we're constantly doing that for you. And we do have the in-app professional development. Please go there. If you're not sure, I'm going to quick jump away from this slide because we have a minute. And it's up here under professional development in your purple sidebar, and you will see exactly what I'm showing you on this slide. And you have, a list of wonderful sessions that you can learn from. And plus you're going to get the link to all the other sessions that you weren't able to attend because you were spending time with me today. So please use that and go and listen to what other teachers are sharing for you. So share your reflection. Hopefully this reading strategy helped. If not, maybe it just kind of sparked some of the things that you already knew and went, I remember I used to do that with my students. So one is, this was great. I was able to take away 1 or 2 really important things, and I love the toolkit. Or 6, hopefully we diffused the concern that it's just too much, okay? That you just can focus on 1 or 2 strategies that really benefit your students. Please enter our drawing to win a gift card and a TCI llama for your classroom. So you will share one thing that you learned from your favorite session today using the hashtag for the TCI Summit. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And here is the final slide. So after this, you are finished, and you can now do what you weren't able to do this morning or early afternoon while you spent time with us, but I cannot convey, and I'm sure Natasha joins me in just a standing ovation that you chose to spend some time with TCI today. Natasha and our TCI groupies, and we love it inside and out. And you being here today is just reinforcement for that love. So here is the link to the survey using the QR code. And once you take the survey, that's your exit ticket and permission to get the certificate of attendance, which will be emailed to you so that you can get PD time with your school. And Natasha, refresh my memory on what the TCI playing cards are.
Yeah, so you will get a little swag bag from TCI when you fill out that form. And this year's theme is kind of around like icebreakers. So there you get a little TCI playing card set that you can use for different icebreakers in your classroom. Dice also. We just had a training where we use dice to do a lot of like getting kids into pairs and different size groups, that type of thing. So that is designed to kind of give you some resources to use in the classroom. Or if you're like me, when you go on some of those great vacations, you can bring this along with you to have some games at the table with your friends and family while you're on.
While you're at the lake.
Yes. So, all right. And Tiffany asked if you can return to the previous slide. So there must have been something that she was looking for there. I don't remember. Oh, okay. So this was the Facebook and the Instagram pages to be able to share from today. Also,
and then here was oh, there it is, the QR code for Facebook. If that was
perfect.
Something that you missed.
And
you can also go to our website, teachtci.com, and you can find links to that at the bottom of the website. Yeah. But here's the link to the survey again. And again, the survey is kind of your permission slip to get the playing cards and dice and the certificate of attendance. Plus, when you are finishing or filling out the survey, this is where we get ideas for the next TCI Summit 2026. So, anything that you could, think of, like, I didn't see this and I would really like a session on that, please put that in there.
Yes, and people always ask about professional hours with the certificate. It will list that you had 3 professional hours with TCI today, so you can submit that to your district if you're tracking hours where you're taking your own time to come and do professional development. And we're so glad that you picked us
and shared your genius. Thank you. So we're finished a couple minutes early. I'll leave this slide up for a couple more minutes in case you need the link through the QR code, but we are done. And if you have any more questions, please, by all means, put them in chat, but we just appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, TCI teachers, and have a fabulous school year. Yay.